My name is Hazel Matthews, and I'm 23 years old. I had just graduated with honors from Stanford with a business degree when my parents decided to ruin what should have been the proudest day of my life. At my own graduation party, surrounded by family and friends, they demanded I sign away my grandfather's inheritance to my sister. When I refused, my father grabbed my newly received diploma and threw it into the fireplace. "You don't deserve Grandpa's money," he shouted as we all watched it burn. I just smiled and walked out. They had no idea what was coming. If you've ever had family betray you on what should have been your special day, drop a comment below about where you're watching from. Don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button if you want to find out why I remained so calm while watching my diploma turn to ashes. Trust me, you'll want to hear what happened at the lawyer's office the following week. Growing up, I was always the responsible one. While other kids were hanging out at the mall or going to parties, I was studying or helping my grandfather with his business records. My sister Amber, 5 years older at 28, was the vibrant, social butterfly who could charm anyone, especially our parents. No matter what she did, they'd smile and say, "That's just Amber being Amber." When Amber failed 3 classes her senior year and nearly didn't graduate, Mom and Dad hired expensive tutors and then threw her a massive graduation party. When I made honor roll every semester, I got a quiet, good job and maybe dinner at Applebee's if I was lucky. This pattern continued throughout our lives. "Hazel, why can't you be more like your sister?" became the soundtrack of my childhood. When Amber dropped out of community college after 1 semester to find herself, my parents supported her financially through 3 years of aimless traveling. When I received a partial scholarship to Stanford and asked for help with the remaining tuition, my father lectured me about financial responsibility and suggested I take out loans. "College isn't for everyone," Mom would say whenever Amber's education came up. "Your sister has street smarts." Meanwhile, I worked 2 part-time jobs while maintaining a 3.9 GPA, applying for every scholarship I could find. The only person who truly believed in me was my grandfather, Harold Matthews. Grandpa had built a successful construction business from nothing, and he recognized something in me that my parents never did. He saw my determination, my work ethic, and my head for business. "You remind me of myself," he told me once while showing me how to balance his company's books. I was 15 then, already fascinated by numbers and strategy. You understand the value of things, not just their price. When I was 16, Grandpa started inviting me to his house every Sunday. He'd show me his investments, explain his business decisions, and listen to my ideas with genuine interest. Those Sundays became sacred to me. Sometimes we wouldn't even talk about money or business. We'd just sit on his porch, drinking lemonade and talking about life. "Your grandfather is just feeling lonely," Mom would dismiss whenever I mentioned these visits. "It's nice of you to humor him." They never understood that those visits were saving me, giving me the validation I never received at home. As Grandpa aged, our bond grew stronger. When I got accepted to Stanford's business program, he was the one who drove me to campus and helped me move into my dorm. My parents were too busy with Amber's latest crisis. She'd maxed out her 3rd credit card and needed their help to avoid collections. During my sophomore year, Grandpa was diagnosed with early-stage Parkinson's. His condition progressed slowly, but it was enough to worry my parents, not about his health, but about his money. Suddenly, they were visiting him regularly, bringing him casseroles he never ate, offering to help with his finances. "They think I don't see what they're doing," Grandpa confided in me during one of our Sunday visits. "They're counting my money before I'm even gone." By my junior year, Grandpa's health had declined further. He asked me to help him get his affairs in order. We spent months organizing his estate with his longtime lawyer, Marcus Goldstein. I never asked about his will or what he planned to leave me. It felt wrong to even think about it while he was still alive. But Grandpa brought it up himself. "I'm leaving you the house and most of my savings," he told me plainly one Sunday. "You're the only one who appreciates what I built." The only one who might build something herself someday. I tried to protest, but he stopped me. It's my money, Hazel. I earned it, and I get to decide where it goes when I'm gone. Your sister will burn through it in a year, and your parents have never understood the value of $1. When Grandpa passed away 3 months before my graduation, I was devastated. The funeral was a somber affair, but I couldn't help noticing how my parents and Amber kept looking at Grandpa's lawyer throughout the service. Marcus had given me a heads up that the will wouldn't be read until after my graduation at Grandpa's specific request. He wanted you to focus on finishing school, Marcus explained. In the months following Grandpa's death, I noticed my parents' attitude toward me shifting. They called more often. Mom suggested shopping trips. Dad asked about my plans after college with unusual interest. Amber even sent me birthday wishes for the first time in years. I wasn't fooled, but I played along, suspecting that Grandpa had probably told them about his intentions. What they didn't know was that Grandpa had prepared me for exactly this scenario. Family and money are a volatile mix, he'd warned me. When they realize what I've done, they'll come after you. Be ready. And I was. I just didn't expect the attack to come at my own graduation party. May 15th dawned bright and clear, perfect Stanford graduation weather. As I put on my cap and gown, I felt a mixture of pride and grief. I wished more than anything that Grandpa could have been there to see me graduate. He'd been so excited about this day, had even bought a new suit for the occasion months in advance. My parents arrived late to the ceremony, barely making it before the procession began. Mom fussed with her hair while Dad checked his watch repeatedly during the university president's speech. When my name was called and I crossed the stage to receive my diploma, I heard my father's weak applause and my mother's obligatory cheer. It wasn't the thunderous pride I'd always hoped for, but I reminded myself that this achievement was for me and for Grandpa. After the ceremony, Mom rushed me through photos. We need to get back to the house, she insisted. The caterers might need help setting up. I found it odd that they'd arranged a party at their house rather than near campus, requiring a 2-hour drive for all my friends. Even stranger was their insistence on inviting extended family members I barely knew. It's a big milestone, Dad had explained when I questioned the guest list. Everyone wants to celebrate with you. As I drove to my parents' house, my phone buzzed with texts from my roommate Diane. Something weird is happening at your party. Your sister keeps talking about a big surprise for you. Then another message. Your parents seem really tense. Your mom snapped at the caterer over napkin placement. Not normal party stress. By the time I pulled into the driveway, my stomach was in knots. The house was decorated with blue and red streamers, Stanford colors, and a banner that read, "Congratulations, graduate." Everything looked perfect on the surface, but something felt off. Aunt Judy greeted me with a too-tight hug. You must be so excited about everything, she gushed, her eyes searching mine for a reaction. All the changes coming your way. Uncle Frank patted my shoulder awkwardly. Big day for the whole family, he said meaningfully. Inside, the house was packed with relatives, family friends, and a few of my Stanford classmates who'd made the drive. Mom was flitting between groups, her laugh a little too loud. Dad was at the bar, pouring stronger drinks than usual. Amber stood by the fireplace, dressed like she was attending a cocktail party rather than a graduation celebration. When she saw me, she raised her champagne glass in a mock toast. Here's the woman of the hour, she called out, drawing attention my way. The golden child returns with her fancy degree. I made my way through the crowd, accepting congratulations with as much grace as I could muster while trying to figure out what was happening. In the kitchen, I overheard my mother's sister and her husband whispering. Do you think she knows what they're planning? Aunt Carol murmured. Hard to say. Harold always said she was the smart one, Uncle Dave replied. But even she can't say no to the whole family. They fell silent when they noticed me in the doorway. Hazel. Congratulations, sweetheart, Aunt Carol said too brightly. We were just saying how proud your grandfather would have been. As I thanked her, I spotted Marcus Goldstein in the living room. I hadn't expected to see Grandpa's lawyer at my graduation party. When our eyes met, he gave me a subtle nod that confirmed my growing suspicions. Whatever my parents had planned, they were going to do it today in front of everyone. I made my way to Marcus. "I didn't know you were coming," I said quietly. "Your father invited me last minute," he replied, keeping his voice low. "Said there might be some family business to discuss. I thought you should have someone in your corner." Before I could thank him, Amber sidled up to us, champagne glass dangerously full. "Marcus, so glad you could make it," she said, her words slightly slurred. "We're all going to make history today, aren't we?" Marcus remained professional. "I'm just here to support Hazel on her graduation day." Amber snorted. "Right. Support." She leaned toward me, the smell of alcohol heavy on her breath. "Hope you're feeling generous today, little sister. That's what family is all about, right? Sharing." As she sauntered away, Marcus touched my elbow. "Whatever happens, stay calm," he advised. "Your grandfather anticipated something like this." I didn't have time to ask what he meant because my father was clinking his glass with a knife, calling for everyone's attention. My mother appeared at his side, holding a folder of documents. Amber positioned herself near them, a triumphant smile playing on her lips. The room fell silent as all eyes turned to my father. My graduation party was about to become something else entirely. "Friends and family," my father began, his voice carrying across the suddenly quiet room. "Thank you all for coming to celebrate Hazel's graduation. It's a proud day for all of us." He paused, taking a long sip of his scotch. "As you know, our family experienced a great loss earlier this year when my father-in-law, Harold, passed away. He was a remarkable man who built a successful business and provided well for his family." My mother nodded beside him, clutching the folder to her chest like a shield. I noticed her hands trembling slightly. "Today isn't just about celebrating Hazel's academic achievement," Dad continued. "It's about family unity and fairness, principles that Harold himself valued." I had to suppress a laugh at that blatant lie. Grandpa had often complained about my father's distorted sense of fairness when it came to his daughters. As many of you know, Harold left the majority of his estate to Hazel. While we respect his wishes, we, as a family, feel that a more equitable distribution would better honor his legacy. Murmurs rippled through the room. Some guests looked uncomfortable, while others nodded in agreement. I remained perfectly still, my expression neutral despite the rage building inside me. My mother stepped forward, opening her folder. "We've had our lawyer draw up some simple documents," she said, her voice higher than usual. "They would restructure Harold's estate to provide equal shares to both of his granddaughters." She looked at me with what she probably thought was a warm, encouraging smile. "Hazel, sweetheart, we know you've always been concerned about family harmony. This is your chance to ensure that everyone is treated fairly." "Fairly," I repeated, keeping my voice level. "Is that what this is about?" "Of course," Dad jumped in. "Your sister has struggled financially, as you know. She's trying to buy her first home, pay off some debts. You're just starting your career with a prestigious degree. You have your whole life ahead of you to build wealth." Amber stepped forward then, her eyes suddenly watery. "I know Grandpa and I weren't as close as you two were," she said, her voice catching theatrically. "But I loved him too. Don't I deserve some security from his estate?" I looked around the room, taking in the expectant faces of relatives I barely knew, friends who looked deeply uncomfortable, and my family, so certain they had me cornered. "No," I said simply. The silence that followed was deafening. "What did you say?" my father asked, his friendly facade slipping. I said no. I won't be signing anything today or any other day. My mother's smile faltered. "Hazel, you might not understand what you're turning down. These papers would still leave you with a substantial sum." "I understand perfectly," I interrupted. "You want me to give up what Grandpa specifically left to me because Amber has mismanaged her money for years?" "The answer is no." Amber's performance instantly transformed to anger. "You selfish bitch," she hissed. "You always thought you were better than everyone else." Grandpa's perfect little protege. "This isn't about who's better," I replied calmly. "This is about respecting Grandpa's wishes. He made his decisions for specific reasons." "You manipulated him," my father shouted, his face reddening. "You took advantage of a sick old man." Several relatives gasped at his outburst. I noticed my Stanford friends edging toward the door, sensing this was no longer a celebration. "Harold wasn't in his right mind when he made that will," my mother insisted, looking around for support. "Hazel spent all that time with him when he was vulnerable, filling his head with ideas." My Uncle Ted stood up then. "Now wait a minute, Susan. Your father was sharp as a tack right until the end. I spoke with him 2 weeks before he passed, and he knew exactly what he was doing." "Stay out of this, Ted," my father snapped. "You don't know the whole story." The room was dividing now, some relatives backing away while others moved closer, eager for the drama. My cousin Jennifer tried to defuse the situation. "Maybe this isn't the right time or place." "It's exactly the right time," my father interrupted. "With everyone here to witness, Hazel can show what kind of person she really is. Selfish or family-oriented?" Marcus Goldstein cleared his throat. "As Harold's lawyer, I should point out that attempting to coerce someone into signing away their inheritance could be considered duress, which would invalidate any documents signed under such circumstances." My father glared at him. "No one invited you to speak, Goldstein." "Actually, you invited me here," Marcus reminded him mildly. The confrontation was spiraling. My mother was now openly crying while Amber paced angrily behind my parents. "You've been handed everything your whole life," my father continued, turning back to me. "Stanford, internships, your grandfather's favoritism. What have you ever done to deserve any of it? Your sister has real-world problems, real needs." "Real-world problems she created herself," I replied. "And you enabled her every step of the way." That's when my father snapped. He lunged forward, grabbing my diploma from where I'd set it on the side table. Before anyone could react, he strode to the fireplace and held it over the flames. "Dad, don't," I started, but it was too late. "You don't deserve Grandpa's money," he roared, dropping my diploma into the fire. "You don't deserve anything you haven't earned yourself." The room froze in collective shock as my Stanford diploma, the physical representation of 4 years of hard work, curled and blackened in the flames. I expected to feel devastation. Instead, a strange calm washed over me. In that moment, any remaining illusion about my family shattered completely. I looked at my father, standing triumphantly by the fireplace, my mother wringing her hands beside him, and Amber's satisfied smirk, and I smiled. "Thank you," I said quietly. "What?" my father asked, confusion replacing his anger. "Thank you for showing me exactly who you are in front of all these witnesses." "I won't forget it." I turned to leave, but my father grabbed my arm. "Don't you dare walk out. We're not finished." "I think we are," I replied, pulling free. As I headed for the door, Amber blocked my path. "If you leave now, don't ever expect to be welcomed back," she threatened. I looked at her, really looked at her, perhaps for the first time seeing her not as my intimidating older sister, but as a deeply insecure woman who had never learned to stand on her own. "I won't be back," I promised her. "And that's the last thing you'll ever get from me." I felt hands on my shoulders and turned to find Marcus beside me. "I'll walk you out," he said firmly. As we left, the party exploded into chaos behind us. Some relatives were shouting at my parents, others were rushing to follow us, and my mother's wails could be heard above it all. In the driveway, Marcus guided me to his car. "I don't think you should drive right now," he said gently. "Let me take you somewhere safe." As we pulled away from the house that had never really been a home, I watched the chaos through the rearview mirror, growing smaller with distance. "Are you all right?" Marcus asked after we'd driven in silence for several minutes. I considered the question carefully. No, I answered honestly. But I will be. The diploma burning, that was my breaking point. Not because the paper itself mattered. Stanford would issue a replacement. What mattered was seeing my father's mask slip completely, revealing the resentment and jealousy he'd harbored toward me for years. What mattered was watching my mother stand by, enabling his cruelty as she always had. What mattered was Amber's satisfied smirk as my achievement turned to ash. Marcus drove us to a quiet diner about 20 miles from my parents' house. As we settled into a booth, my phone exploded with notifications, texts from friends who'd witnessed the scene, messages from relatives taking sides, and increasingly angry demands from my parents to return immediately. You should turn that off for now, Marcus suggested, signaling the waitress for coffee. Give yourself some space to think. I silenced my phone and took a deep breath. I knew something like this might happen, but I never imagined they'd make such a public spectacle. Marcus nodded. Your grandfather anticipated this reaction. He was very perceptive about your family dynamics. What did you mean back there when you said Grandpa had anticipated something like this? Marcus stirred his coffee thoughtfully. Harold and I had many conversations about your parents' attitudes toward money. He was concerned they would try to pressure you into giving up your inheritance or contest the will. Can they contest it? I asked. They can try, Marcus said with a slight smile. But Harold was very thorough. For the past 3 years, he had regular psychological evaluations documenting his mental competence. He videotaped his will signing and recorded a personal message explaining his decisions. I felt a wave of gratitude for my grandfather's foresight. So that's why you weren't worried when they started making those accusations about me manipulating him. Exactly. But Harold didn't just protect the will, he protected you. He knew this moment would come, and he made preparations. As Marcus explained, Grandpa had established a trust rather than leaving everything directly to me. The trust had very specific conditions that would only be revealed at the official reading of the will. He had also set up a separate account to cover any legal expenses I might incur if the will was contested. Your grandfather loved you very much, Marcus said. He told me once that you were the daughter he wished he'd had. That night, I stayed at a hotel rather than returning to campus, where my parents might find me. I lay awake for hours, replaying the day's events and wondering how I'd never seen the full extent of my family's toxicity before. The next morning, my phone showed 37 missed calls and dozens of messages. I scrolled through them selectively. My roommate Diane asking if I was okay. My cousin Jennifer apologizing for not standing up for me more forcefully. My father threatening to cut me off completely, as if he'd ever supported me in the first place. My mother guilting me about her stress-induced migraine. Amber alternating between vicious insults and plaintive claims that I was tearing the family apart. The most disturbing messages came from unknown numbers. Apparently, my parents had shared my contact information with extended family members who were now weighing in with their opinions on what I should do with my inheritance. I methodically blocked the negative numbers and responded only to supportive friends. Then I called Marcus. I need to know everything Grandpa set up, I told him. No more surprises. I want to be fully prepared for whatever comes next. We met at his office that afternoon. The comfortable space, with its leather-bound books and subtle scent of lemon polish, reminded me of quiet afternoons spent with Grandpa. Marcus laid out several folders on his desk. First things first, he said. I've prepared a cease and desist letter to send to your parents regarding harassment. Based on the number of calls and messages you've received, we could potentially file for a restraining order if necessary. I nodded, still struggling to accept that legal protection from my own family was now something I needed to consider. Second, I've discovered some concerning financial activity regarding your grandfather's house. Marcus slid a document across the desk. Your parents took out a second mortgage on the property 3 months ago, using a power of attorney your grandfather granted your mother for medical decisions only. The bank is investigating, but it appears they may have committed fraud. The revelation shouldn't have shocked me, but it did. They were stealing from him before he was even gone? It appears so. And there's more. Marcus hesitated. Your sister's financial troubles are more serious than you might realize. I hired a private investigator to look into why your parents were so desperate for this money. Amber has significant gambling debts, over $200,000 owed to some potentially dangerous people. The pieces fell into place. My parents' desperate grab for the inheritance wasn't just about their usual favoritism. They were trying to bail Amber out of serious trouble. Yesterday, while you were at your graduation ceremony, the security company reported an attempted break-in at your grandfather's house. The police identified your father's car on the street, but he was gone by the time they arrived. I felt a chill. What were they looking for? Probably anything they could sell quickly. Artwork, collectibles. Your grandfather had some valuable first edition books. We spent the next few hours implementing a comprehensive protection plan. I authorized Marcus to hire a security company to install cameras and a new alarm system at Grandpa's house, my house now. We froze certain assets that my parents might try to access. I changed all my passwords and created a new email address that only trusted friends would know. As I was leaving, Marcus handed me a sealed envelope. Your grandfather asked me to give you this if things ever reach this point. He hoped you'd never need to read it. Alone in my hotel room that night, I carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a letter written in Grandpa's shaky handwriting. My dearest Hazel, asterisk. If you're reading this, then your parents have shown their true colors, as I feared they might. I'm sorry. It's a terrible thing to discover that the people who should love you most are capable of such selfishness, asterisk. I want you to know that my decision to leave my estate to you wasn't just because you're smart with money or because we shared a special bond, though both those things are true. I chose you because in you, I see the values I tried to live by: integrity, hard work, and genuine care for others, asterisk. Your parents and sister will try to make you feel guilty. They'll call you selfish. Remember that protecting yourself from those who would take advantage of you is not selfish, it's necessary. You cannot pour from an empty cup, as they say, asterisk. The house holds many memories for me, but now it's yours to create new ones. Sell it if you wish. Keep it if it brings you joy. The money is yours to build the life you deserve, asterisk. Whatever happens, know that I am proud of you, not for what you achieve, but for who you are, asterisk. All my love, asterisk. Grandpa, asterisk. I clutched the letter to my chest and finally allowed myself to cry, not just for the family I'd lost today, but for the grandfather who had loved me enough to prepare me for this moment, even knowing he wouldn't be here to help me through it. Tomorrow would bring the official reading of the will and likely more drama. But tonight, I had Grandpa's words to comfort me. I wasn't alone, even now. The week after my disastrous graduation party was a masterclass in crisis management. Each morning, I woke up with a clearer sense of purpose and a growing determination to honor my grandfather's legacy by standing my ground. Marcus had connected me with Dr. Elaine Foster, a therapist specializing in family estrangement and inheritance disputes. This won't just be a legal battle, he'd warned me. It'll be an emotional marathon. You need support. During our first session, Dr. Foster helped me understand that my family's behavior wasn't just about money, it was about control. They're realizing they can no longer manipulate you financially, she explained. That's why they're escalating. Every boundary you set will initially make them push harder. She was right. My parents' tactics grew increasingly desperate as the days passed. When I didn't respond to their messages, they enlisted flying monkeys. Relatives and family friends who called to tell me how worried my parents were, how heartbroken my mother had become, how I needed to be the bigger person. Your mother hasn't eaten in days, my Aunt Sharon claimed dramatically. Your father's blood pressure is through the roof because of the stress you're causing, another relative insisted. I maintained a calm, broken record response. I'm sorry to hear that. This is between my parents and me. I appreciate your concern, but I won't be discussing it further. Meanwhile, Marcus and I worked methodically to document everything. We recorded each call, saved every text and email, and kept a detailed log of all contact attempts. Marcus had also hired a digital security expert to monitor my accounts after we discovered someone had attempted to access my email, the IP address traced back to my parents' home. The most disturbing development came 3 days after the party. The security company called to report another attempted break-in at Grandpa's house, this time with clear footage of both my parents trying to force open the back door. When the alarm sounded, they fled, but not before my father threw a rock through an antique stained glass window that had been in the family for generations. "We should file a police report," Marcus advised when I showed him the footage. "This is no longer just about the inheritance, they're committing crimes." The responding officer viewed the security footage with a sympathetic expression. "Family disputes are the worst," she said, completing her report. "We'll increase patrols in the area, but you might want to consider having someone stay at the property." That night, my cousin Jennifer called. Unlike the other relatives, she wasn't trying to manipulate me into reconciling with my parents. "I need to warn you about something," she said in a hushed voice. "I overheard Uncle Frank talking to your dad. They're planning to claim that your grandfather had dementia when he wrote his will. They're going to say you knew about his condition and took advantage of him." "That's ridiculous," I said, though the accusation still stung. "Grandpa was sharp until the very end. His doctors will confirm that." "I know, but they're desperate." Aunt Susan mentioned something about Amber owing money to dangerous people. They seem terrified about what will happen if they can't get access to that inheritance soon. Marcus's investigation had confirmed Jennifer's information. Amber's gambling problem had led her to borrow from loan sharks, and the interest was compounding weekly. My parents had already remortgaged their own house to pay off her previous debts, leaving them financially vulnerable. "Your sister needs professional help, not a bailout," Dr. Foster told me during our next session. "If your parents use your grandfather's money to pay off these debts without addressing the underlying addiction, she'll just accumulate more debt." I knew she was right, but it was hard to completely harden my heart against Amber's situation. Despite everything, she was still my sister. After careful consideration, I asked Marcus about setting up a separate fund for addiction treatment if Amber ever decided to seek help. It wouldn't be directly accessible to her or my parents, I specified. It would only pay a treatment facility directly. Marcus looked at me with newfound respect. "That's very generous, considering everything they've done." "It's what Grandpa would have wanted," I said simply. He believed in helping people help themselves, not enabling destructive behavior. The day before the official will reading, we received an anonymous tip that my parents had hired a lawyer known for aggressive tactics in contesting wills. According to our source, they were prepared to make ugly accusations about both me and my grandfather in court. "Let them try," Marcus said confidently. "We have years of documentation proving your grandfather's mental competence. We have the video of him explaining his decisions. We have financial records showing your sister's mismanagement of money and your parents' enabling. Most importantly, we have the trust document itself, which your grandfather designed specifically to withstand these kinds of challenges." That evening, I visited Grandpa's house, my house, for the first time since his passing. The security team had repaired the broken window and installed additional cameras. As I walked through the familiar rooms, running my fingers along the bookshelves he'd built himself, sitting in his favorite chair, I felt his presence surrounding me. In his study, I found a photo I'd never seen before, Grandpa and me at my high school graduation, both of us beaming. He'd framed it and placed it prominently on his desk. Next to it was a much older photo of him standing in front of the half-built house, young and proud of what he was creating. I realized then that this house wasn't just a piece of real estate or an asset in an inheritance dispute. It was Grandpa's legacy, a physical manifestation of his life's work, his values, and his love. My parents saw it as a piggy bank to break open. I saw it as a responsibility to honor. That night, I slept in my grandfather's house for the first time since becoming its owner. As I drifted off in the guest room that had always been mine during visits, I felt a sense of peace despite the storm I knew was coming. Tomorrow would bring the official will reading and likely a showdown with my parents and sister. But tonight I was home. And I was ready. The law offices of Goldstein and Associates projected an air of dignified professionalism. Mahogany furniture, tasteful artwork, and the subtle scent of leather-bound books created an atmosphere of solemnity appropriate for the occasion. As I entered the conference room, Marcus gave me a reassuring nod from his position at the head of the table. I had arrived 20 minutes early at Marcus's suggestion. "It gives you the psychological advantage," he'd explained. "They'll be entering your space, not the other way around." At precisely 10 a.m., my parents and Amber arrived, accompanied by a thin, nervous-looking man who introduced himself as Gerald Peters, their attorney. My father refused to look at me, while my mother made a show of dabbing at her eyes with a tissue. Amber glared openly, her expression a mixture of hostility and triumph. Several other relatives trickled in, my mother's brother Uncle Ted, who had always been kind to me. Aunt Sharon, who had been calling me relentlessly all week, and two of my grandfather's cousins who I'd met only a handful of times. Most avoided eye contact with me, creating an invisible divide in the room between my side and their side. At 10:15, Marcus closed the door and addressed the room. "Thank you all for coming. We're here today for the official reading of Harold Matthews' last will and testament. Before we begin, I must ask that everyone remain civil. Any disruptions will result in the immediate removal of the disruptive party." My father snorted derisively but said nothing. Marcus removed a document from a folder and began to read. "I, Harold James Matthews, being of sound mind and body, do hereby declare this to be my last will and testament, revoking all previously made wills and codicils." The formal legal language continued, detailing small bequests. $5,000 to his church, his collection of fishing gear to Uncle Ted, a set of pearl earrings to my mother that had belonged to my grandmother. Then came the main provisions. "To my granddaughter, Hazel Marie Matthews, I leave my primary residence at 1423 Oak Lane, including all furnishings and personal effects contained therein, as well as the sum of $2.4 million, representing the bulk of my liquid assets and investments." My mother made a choke sound. Amber whispered something to their lawyer, who frowned and made a note. Furthermore, Marcus continued, "I have established the Harold Matthews Trust, with Hazel Matthews as the sole beneficiary and trustee, with Marcus Goldstein serving as the trust administrator until Hazel reaches the age of 30. My father could contain himself no longer. "This is outrageous," he exclaimed. My father-in-law was not in his right mind when he made these arrangements. "We intend to contest this will on grounds of undue influence and diminished capacity." Their lawyer cleared his throat. "My clients have substantial evidence that Mr. Matthews was suffering from cognitive decline in his final years, and that Hazel took advantage of his vulnerable state to manipulate him into changing his will in her favor." Marcus appeared utterly unfazed. "I anticipated these objections, which is why Harold insisted on documenting his mental competence throughout the last 5 years of his life. Before proceeding with potential litigation that I assure you will be both costly and unsuccessful, I'd like to share something with everyone present." He turned to his assistant, who wheeled in a television on a stand. "Harold recorded this video 18 months ago, after his Parkinson's diagnosis, but well before his condition had any cognitive effects, as his neurologist will testify if necessary." Marcus pressed play, and suddenly, there was my grandfather on the screen. He looked tired, but alert, his eyes clear and focused. "If you're watching this," Grandpa began, "then I've passed on, and my will is being contested, most likely by Susan and Frank. I want to make it absolutely clear that I am of sound mind, making these decisions with full awareness of their implications." The room fell silent as Grandpa explained, in detail, why he had structured his will as he had. He spoke about Amber's history of financial irresponsibility and addiction issues, my parents' enabling behavior, and their multiple attempts to pressure him into giving them money over the years. I love all my family, he continued, but love doesn't mean enabling destructive behavior. I've chosen Hazel as my primary beneficiary because she has demonstrated the values I hold dear: hard work, integrity, and responsibility. She didn't manipulate me. She was the only one who never asked me for money or tried to influence my decisions about my estate. My mother was openly crying now. My father's face had turned an alarming shade of red. Grandpa's recording continued. To my daughter Susan and her husband Frank, I leave the sum of $50,000 with the hope that they will use it wisely. To my granddaughter Amber, I leave the sum of $50,000 to be held in trust and released only for educational purposes or addiction treatment, should she choose to address her gambling problem. Amber gasped, her eyes widening with shock and shame as her secret was exposed to the extended family. Then came the bombshell. Finally, I include this stipulation. Should any beneficiary contest this will or attempt to coerce another beneficiary into redistributing their inheritance, their own bequest shall be revoked in its entirety and donated to the Parkinson's Research Foundation. Additionally, I have established a separate legal defense fund of $250,000 to ensure that my wishes are carried out exactly as I have specified, regardless of any challenges. The video ended with Grandpa looking directly into the camera. Hazel, if you're watching this, stand your ground. What's yours is yours, fair and square. I'm proud of the woman you've become. Silence descended on the conference room. My parents' lawyer looked profoundly uncomfortable, shuffling his papers and avoiding eye contact with his clients. Uncle Ted was nodding slightly, a small smile playing on his lips. As you can see, Marcus said into the silence, Harold was very clear about his wishes and the consequences of contesting them. Should you choose to proceed with litigation, not only will you almost certainly fail, but you will forfeit your own inheritances in the process. My father stood up abruptly. This is manipulation from beyond the grave. He can't control us like this. Marcus remained calm. It's a standard no contest clause, perfectly legal and enforceable in this state. Your choice is simple. Accept the $50,000 each that Harold left you, or pursue a costly legal battle that you will lose and receive nothing. $50,000? My mother cried. After all the years I took care of him? After everything we've done? I finally spoke, my voice steady despite the emotions churning inside me. Grandpa saw through you both. He knew you only showed interest in him because of his money. The care you provided was self-serving and transparent. Turning to Amber, I added, he knew about your gambling, even though you all tried to hide it. He wanted to help you get better, not fund your addiction. Amber's face crumpled. For the first time, I saw genuine emotion break through her facade of entitlement. How did he know? She whispered. Because he paid attention, I replied. He cared enough to see the truth, not just what he wanted to see. My father grabbed my mother's arm. We're leaving. This isn't over. Their lawyer cleared his throat again. Actually, Mr. Walker, I would advise against making threats at this juncture. Based on the evidence presented, I must counsel you that pursuing litigation would be inadvisable and potentially costly. Marcus handed each of them an envelope. These contain the official documentation of your bequests, as well as the forms required to claim them. You have 30 days to decide whether to accept the terms or forfeit the inheritance entirely. As they stormed out, Amber lingered behind. For a moment, I thought she might say something conciliatory, but instead, she leaned close and hissed, You always thought you were so much better than me. I hope you choke on all that money. After they left, the remaining relatives approached me one by one. Uncle Ted gave me a warm hug. Your grandfather would be proud, he said. You handled that with grace. Aunt Sharon looked embarrassed. I didn't know about the gambling, she murmured. Or that they were trying to pressure Harold for money. I'm sorry for the calls. When everyone else had gone, Marcus sat down beside me. "You did well," he said. "How are you feeling?" I considered the question carefully. Vindicated, I decided. And sad. And maybe a little relieved that it's finally over. "It might not be completely over," Marcus cautioned. "They may still try something, even knowing they'll lose their own inheritance if they contest the will formally." "I know," I said. "But Grandpa prepared us for that too, didn't he?" Marcus smiled. "He certainly did. And speaking of preparation, there's one more thing Harold wanted me to tell you, something not included in the will or the video." He handed me another envelope, this one sealed with wax in an old-fashioned manner. "He asked me to give you this privately after the will reading." Inside was a single key and a handwritten note. Hazel, asterisk. "In the basement of the house, behind the water heater, there's a hidden safe. This key opens it. Inside, you'll find something I've been working on for years, something I couldn't include in the official will because it would have caused even more problems with your parents, asterisk. It's yours now. Use it wisely, asterisk. Love always, asterisk. Grandpa, asterisk." Marcus watched my expression change as I read the note. "I don't know what's in the safe," he said. "Harold never told me, but he seemed to think it was important." That evening, after everyone had gone, I would discover what my grandfather had left me, stock certificates and detailed records of quiet investments he'd made over decades, separate from the assets included in his will. Investments now worth over $5 million. And a journal documenting every attempt my parents had made to access his money over the years, complete with dates, amounts, and his own reflections on their behavior. But for now, sitting in Marcus's office with the key clutched in my hand, I felt a profound connection to my grandfather. He hadn't just left me his money and his house. He'd left me his wisdom, his foresight, and most importantly, the courage to stand up for myself. "What happens now?" I asked Marcus. "Now," he said with a smile, "you begin building your own legacy." 6 months after that fateful graduation day, I stood on the back porch of my grandfather's house, my house, watching the autumn leaves drift across the expansive lawn. I'd spent the summer renovating, keeping the character and history that made the place special while updating it to reflect my own taste and needs. The antique stained glass window my father had broken had been painstakingly restored by an artisan who specialized in historical preservation. It now caught the afternoon light, casting rainbow patterns across the hardwood floors Grandpa had installed himself decades ago. "He would love what you've done with the place," said Aunt Judy, joining me on the porch with 2 steaming mugs of apple cider. She was the only member of my mother's family who had maintained consistent contact after the will reading. Unlike the other relatives who had either taken sides or tried to remain neutral, which usually meant pressuring me to reconcile with my parents for the sake of the family, Aunt Judy had simply shown up, offering practical help and emotional support without judgment. "I hope so," I replied, accepting the cider gratefully. "Sometimes I worry I'm changing too much, that I'm erasing him somehow." "Nonsense," Aunt Judy said firmly. "Harold never wanted this place to become a museum. He wanted it to be a home, your home. The changes you're making honor that wish." The past 6 months had been a journey of both practical changes and emotional growth. After discovering the hidden investment portfolio in Grandpa's safe, I'd hired a financial advisor recommended by Marcus to help me manage my new wealth responsibly. With her guidance, I'd established my own investment strategy, created a charitable foundation focusing on financial literacy for young adults, and set aside funding for my own future business ventures. I'd also continued therapy with Dr. Foster, working through the complex emotions surrounding my family's betrayal and subsequent estrangement. Grief isn't just for death, she'd explained during one particularly difficult session. You're grieving the family you deserved, but never had, the parents who should have supported you, the sister who should have been your ally. That grief came in waves. Some days, I could focus on building my new life and feel genuine excitement about the future. Other days, a small reminder, A family photo I hadn't yet put away, a holiday advertisement featuring happy relatives gathered around a table, would trigger an overwhelming sense of loss. My parents had made several attempts to re-establish contact after the will reading, each approach more desperate than the last. They had ultimately accepted their $50,000 inheritances when their lawyer convinced them that contesting the will would be futile, but financial troubles continued to plague them. The second mortgage they'd taken out on their house to pay Amber's debts had led to foreclosure proceedings. My father had been forced to postpone his planned retirement. Their messages oscillated between angry accusations, "This is all your fault," and manipulative pleas, "We're your parents. You can't just abandon us in our time of need." Each time, I maintained the boundaries Dr. Foster had helped me establish, responding with the same calm message: "I'm not ready to discuss reconciliation until you acknowledge what you did and commit to therapy." They never did. Amber's situation had taken a different turn. 3 months after the will reading, she had hit rock bottom, losing her apartment and ending up in the hospital after loan sharks caught up with her. In a moment of desperation, she had called me. "I need help," she'd admitted, her voice small and broken. "The kind Grandpa wanted me to get." I had arranged for her entry into a specialized treatment program for gambling addiction, paid for through the trust Grandpa had established for her. Our relationship remained fragile and distant. Too much had happened for an immediate reconciliation, but there was a tentative bridge being built, one honest conversation at a time. "Are you still planning to start your business next year?" Aunt Judy asked, bringing me back to the present. I nodded. "The business plan is almost finalized. I'm meeting with potential partners next week." Using my business degree and the practical knowledge Grandpa had shared with me, I was establishing a consulting firm specializing in helping family-owned businesses navigate succession planning and wealth transfer. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was using my own painful experience to help other families avoid similar pitfalls. Harold would be over the moon, Aunt Judy said with a smile. "He always said you had a head for business like his." My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Judge dismissed their latest petition. It's officially over." I showed the message to Aunt Judy, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. My parents had made one final desperate attempt to challenge a specific provision of the trust, claiming that Grandpa had promised them the Lake Cottage property that was included in my inheritance. The case had been weak from the start, but its dismissal felt like the closing of a chapter. "Now you can truly move forward," Aunt Judy said, squeezing my hand. That evening, after Aunt Judy had gone home, I sat in Grandpa's old study, now my home office, and reflected on everything that had happened since that terrible graduation day. The journey had been painful, but it had also been transformative. I'd learned that family isn't just about blood relations. The chosen family I'd built around me, Marcus with his steady guidance, Dr. Foster with her compassionate wisdom, Aunt Judy with her practical support, and friends who had stood by me throughout the ordeal, provided the genuine connection my biological family had never offered. I'd learned that standing your ground isn't selfish when what you're protecting is right and just. For years, I'd been conditioned to give in to my family's demands, to be the peacekeeper, to put my sister's needs before my own. Breaking that pattern had been necessary for my own well-being. I'd learned that true generosity comes from a place of security, not obligation. Now that I was financially stable and emotionally healthier, I could make deliberate choices about how to share my resources, funding Amber's treatment, establishing scholarships, contributing to causes Grandpa had cared about, without being manipulated or depleted. Most importantly, I'd learned that I was stronger than I had ever realized. The crucible of that terrible graduation day had burned away my need for parental approval and forged something new: confidence in my own judgment, trust in my own worth. On my desk sat a framed photo of Grandpa and me on the day I'd received my college acceptance letter. His proud smile reminded me daily of what genuine support looked like. Next to it was a small wooden box he had carved himself, containing the key to the basement safe, a symbol of the trust he had placed in me. Would I ever fully reconcile with my parents? I honestly didn't know. Forgiveness might be possible someday, but only with genuine acknowledgement and changed behavior on their part. Until then, I would continue building the life I deserved, honoring my grandfather's legacy not just by protecting what he had left me, but by embodying the values he had lived by. Outside my window, the last light of day filtered through autumn leaves. Inside, I was finally home, not just in this house, but in myself. What would you have done in my situation? Would you have stood your ground against family pressure, or would you have given in for the sake of peace? Have you ever had to make a difficult choice between honoring someone's wishes and keeping family harmony? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe if the story resonated with you. Remember, sometimes the family we choose is more important than the family we're born into. Thank you for listening to my journey, and I wish you strength in your own.